Okay, and welcome everybody to today's episode on digital transformation leaders, our weekly webinar series in conjunction with the inaugural DX Award. So my name is Lars Friedrich, former journalist and professional storyteller, and I'm your host today, together with Andreas, who will introduce himself in a moment. This webinar series is brought to you by SwissGem in partnership with Deloitte. Today's episode is very special to us because we're looking at a very exciting topic at episode 6, digital transformation towards advanced manufacturing. So we'll have the absolute creme de la creme of experts with us today, looking really into details on what we can have. We are very glad that we have representatives from EDB, from JR Group, ABB, and TÜV Süd with us today, and we'll introduce our guests in a moment. First and foremost, welcome to everybody who's dialing in on this Tuesday in October. You could be anywhere else, but you chose to join us. Thank you for that. As always, we have significant time reserved for your questions, so please come in early, use the Q&A section of Zoom, not the chat function, the Q&A section. Either post your questions or upvote others, because that makes it so much easier for us as hosts to see what you deem to be the most significant questions. What is advanced manufacturing about? Well, it has one of the highest multiplier effects of any economic sector. Yeah, digest that for a moment. So for every one worker in manufacturing, there are another 5 employees hired elsewhere. So it has a massive impact on an economy, and EDB will share a little bit more on their view on advanced manufacturing. But it's also a massive economy. In the US, for example, for every $1 in manufacturing, another $2.74 is added to the economy on the GDP side. So huge impact on GDP in numbers, but also for the workforce. So let's start with the poll today so that we get a little bit of an idea on what's the audience's view on the topic. Let's launch the poll and look into, will ASEAN be the new global manufacturing powerhouse in the next 3 to 5 years? Yes or no? Very simple question. Will ASEAN be the next economic powerhouse? We see, a lot of changes on a global scale. Is ASEAN going to be benefiting from it? That's my time to also say hello to Andreas. Andreas, what's your take on it?
Well, hello, Lars. My take is it's a difficult question. It's almost a non-yes or no question. So I think it's the reality is a bit different than just yes or no. But I think ASEAN will profit from the changes.
Okay. So we'll can also ask our panelists in a moment, but let's close the poll and see what our audience thinks today. So let's have a look at what our audience thinks and where the numbers stand. My guess it's around a 50-50, but as so often, I'm not the expert in the topic, so let's see what the experts have. Can we see the poll results, please? Wow. 80%
oh, wow.
Say, wow, 80%. That's a big number. 4 out of 5. Wow, fantastic. So a lot to discuss. But before we jump into the panel, Andreas wants to give a quick overview on and an update on the DX Digital Transformation Awards. The ability to apply has ceased, but he just want to give a quick update on what's the timeline on what's happening next. Andreas Enderlin, the chair of the Digital Transformation Awards, but also, of course, as we know, with Hugo Capital Partners. Andreas.
Thank you very much, Lars. And I'm really gonna stick to the time constraints because I don't want to spend a lot of time. But maybe if we just go one further, as you rightly pointed out, the application deadline was Friday last week, and I have to say it's been an amazing record intake in terms of applications. So we are very, very, very happy with the applications that have come in. And I think today I just want to spend some time to say thank you to the people, first of all, behind the scenes that are also managing today the DX Leader webinar, but that have really tirelessly worked in the background. And that's really from the team. That's Nina, that's Clarissa, that's Andrea, and that's also Han from your team. So a special thank you actually go out to these folks, because they have really worked night and day for that project. Just quickly on what we have achieved. As I mentioned, we brought in 44 applications, I think from a very diverse background and from different businesses. So we have MNCs, we have SMEs, we have startups. And I think what we are especially proud of is really that we were able to bring in some Singaporean companies that are doing amazing things, especially in the advanced manufacturing area. So this was our goal, you know, to connect the companies from Singapore to a international audience and to make sure we can bring the word out to the world what Singaporean manufacturing sector is doing. So I'm personally very proud of that. Then we have brought together a jury board, very diverse, very competent. I'm also very happy about that. And we have worked on the digital maturity framework with our collaboration partner, Deloitte. So a lot of things have been achieved, and I can just say a big thank you to everybody that contributed. The DX Leader Series event that we are on today, that has also been initiated a couple of months back. And I think what you can see today is really what we have learned along the way. So we have done 6 episodes. So today is actually the 6th episodes. We have talked about different topics, B2C, B2B. I'm not going to go into all the details. But we have also attracted a global audience. And I think that was really also the goal of this series, to open up to the world, as we were all stuck, you know, in COVID-19 lockdowns. And so I'm very, very glad that we were able to set this up. And finally, is really a big thank you to all our sponsors, our supporters, so all the chambers, all our sponsors, especially EDB. EDB was part of the very first group that were interested in the topic. And I think I just want to extend my very warm thank you to EDB, but also obviously to all the other sponsors and supporters. So maybe one slide further. So I was talking about the jury, so you can see here a selection. That's not the complete list, but what I'm really, really proud is that we were able to attract highly competent, a diverse board, and especially with Pinfen, with Nicole, with Anneliese, we have really some power from the women's side on digital transformation. So I'm very, very proud, and obviously also others that will contribute to the jury and make sure that these assessments are being conducted in an objective way. Maybe one further. On the next steps, if we can go one further, on the next steps, just very quickly. So we're now beginning of October. So what we're doing is really preparing all the pitching events. We're preparing the shortlisting. We're bringing together the jury. We will have a pre-briefing with the jury, and where we discuss how we're going to do the ratings and how the interaction is going to be. So a very busy period, and then we will move into the subcategory pitching events, where we will have also the public joining. So all the people that are joining today, please also join during the online pitching event. It's going to be fantastic. We will have Lars again with, you know, as a moderator, which is always fun. So please join. That was basically what I wanted to share with you. I hope I was within the time frame, Lars.
I couldn't have done it faster, but I can try next time. Okay, thanks, Andreas.
Thank you.
And good luck for everybody who submitted. I think it's really such a great opportunity to be kind of called out for the great work that you and your companies have done in the digital transformation space. So today's episode is about advanced manufacturing. And to kick off the topic, we have a very special guest and introduction. So welcome to Pin Fan Fong. She's a director in the strategy division of EDB, and she will share about advanced manufacturing. Pin Fan, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
perfectly. So
great.
please share with us the view on Singapore, a future-ready advanced manufacturing hub. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all, and thank you, Swiss Champ, for the invitation. It's my pleasure to kickstart today's webinar. I will take a few minutes to paint the backdrop of manufacturing in Singapore, trends that will impact manufacturing, and Singapore's approach to create the conducive environment for manufacturers to succeed. Before I start, for those unfamiliar with the Singapore Economic Development Board, or EDB in short, we are a government agency under the Singapore's Ministry of Trade and Industry, responsible for 30% of Singapore's GDP across manufacturing and tradable services sectors. EDB works with international businesses, providing information of the business landscape, connection to partners, and access to other government support to facilitate investments. Next slide, please. Today, our economy comprises a diverse base of manufacturing and services sectors. Manufacturing accounts for 20% of our GDP, and we intend to keep this percentage over the long term. And Singapore is today a trusted partner for businesses, recognized for our business-friendly environment, skilled talent, connectedness, and livability. Next slide. Over the years, the manufacturing profile in Singapore has changed significantly. Since our independence, we started our industrialization efforts, manufacturing matches, fish hooks, mosquito coils, and today, our manufacturing sector comprises complex assembly, technology, process, and IP-intensive activities with leadership positions across diverse industries. Companies cite not only manufacturing facilities, but the full suite of headquarters, research and development, and supply chain management functions in Singapore to serve the region. Next slide. The future of manufacturing will be shaped by 5 key trends. The trends will not come as a surprise, but as you know, COVID-19 has certainly intensified some of these trends. Asia and ASEAN will be a dominant growth driver, and its emerging middle-class consumers will drive demand for more sophisticated products and services. The uncertainties in today's global trade environment is also boosting manufacturing activities in ASEAN. Technology has become a potent disruptor to economies, firms, and jobs. Industry 4.0 is transforming the global manufacturing industry. Advanced robotics has the potential to disrupt the global labor force. The operating environment for manufacturers is also changing rapidly. Backlash on globalization, climate change, and evolving workforce profile and aspirations. These trends present both opportunities and challenges for all of us. Next slide, please. And Singapore's approach is quite simple. It is to create the conducive ecosystem for manufacturers to succeed. We have embarked on various strategic initiatives in advanced manufacturing to not only support the growth and transformation of the manufacturing base, but also provide thought leadership and references of best practices for the region. To date, Singapore has established several industrial parks and innovation zones, such as Jurong Island for our energy and chemicals industry, One North Biopolis for biomedical research. To support future growth in manufacturing, a new Jurong Innovation District will be built. To be developed in phases, this is a 600-hectare next-generation district to house a one-stop campus for research and development institutions, industry enablers, and advanced manufacturing factories. To build new capabilities in innovation, our Agencies for Science, Technology and Research, A*STAR, has established several private-public partnership platforms such as model factories to help companies experiment with advanced manufacturing technologies in a learning environment. Singapore has also set up national programs in emerging areas such as robotics and additive manufacturing to collaborate with companies to translate research into commercial applications. National skills upgrading programs are also put in place to support reskilling of the manufacturing workforce. In 2017, EDB launched the Smart Industry Readiness Index, or SIRI, which comprises of a suite of frameworks and tools to help manufacturers start, scale, and sustain their transformation journey. Hence, at the enterprise level, SIRI lays out a 4-step approach to help manufacturing firms. First, to learn about Industry 4.0 concepts. Second, to evaluate the current state of their facilities through the SIRI Assessment matrix. 3, identify high impact focus areas to work on. And 4, architect the transformation roadmap to deliver sustained value for their businesses. More recently, in 2019, EDB launched the Manufacturing Transformation Insights Report, which analyzes the data collected from the SIRI assessments of 200 Singapore-based manufacturing facilities. This Manufacturing Transformation Insights Report is the world's first to provide a data-backed snapshot of the current state of industrial transformation across multiple manufacturing industries. It also can be used as a benchmark for manufacturers to assess and compare the Industry 4.0 maturity levels against those of their peers in the same industry. We believe that as companies look to accelerate digitalization efforts to manage COVID-19 crisis, SIRI will be useful to manufacturers, governments, industry associations, and other stakeholders in ideating and developing new solutions and interventions that will accelerate industrial transformations. Now, lastly, I want to touch on community platforms. These are important to foster interaction, collaboration, and learning. Hence, in 2018, we initiated a partnership with Deutsche Messe to set up the Asia Pacific extension of Hannover Messe, the world's largest industrial fair in Singapore. Industrial Transformation Asia Pacific, or ITAP, is the platform to bring the world's leading manufacturers, technology providers, and audience to exchange on the latest tech trends, showcase adoption success stories, network, and foster new opportunities. ITAP has 2 successful runs in 2018 and 2019. And as you know, because of the difficult year that we have, ITAP will be definitely conducted differently this year. It will go entirely virtual. So I welcome all of you to also join us virtually for the 3rd edition of ITAP 2 weeks later on the 20th to 22nd October this month. So in the same vein, this year, EDB is also pleased to connect and work with SwissChem on the Digital Transformation Award in Advanced Manufacturing to celebrate the transformation journeys of our manufacturers. And with this, I end my sharing of Singapore's manufacturing ecosystem. I wish everyone a fruitful session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pinfan. That was fantastic. Obviously, one thing that got me most excited is the partnership with Hannover Messe, because I was born and bred in Hanover, so I'm very familiar with them and so glad to see them collaborating with Singapore. Thank you so much for enlightening us and sharing some of the trends with us. Thank you. Now let's start our panel, and a quick reminder to everybody on the participant side, please start posting your questions before it's too late. Traditionally, we are not able to answer all the questions because once we start the Q&A section later, we have them just coming in, so better post them early. So without further ado, let's introduce our fantastic panelists. We have Jocelyn Chang, the Group CEO of JR Group Holdings. We have Johan de Villiers, the MD in Singapore and Head of Industrial Automation Southeast Asia at ABB. We have Dr. Andreas Hauser, MD Digital Services at TÜV Süd. And last but not least, we have Lim Kok Kyang. He's the Executive Vice President and ExCo member at EDB. Welcome, everybody. Let's go around the house. Jocelyn, what's JR Group's take on advanced manufacturing, just to get the ball rolling?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. We actually run manufacturing for food. We are doing ready-to-eat meals and also plant-based protein. And at the same time, I also run another sauces manufacturing. So in the advanced manufacturing, we are looking at 2 parts. One is really incorporating the ERP to determine what to produce in our plant. The other is to actually use technology onto the distribution channel of our food, because we are into another business that is in vending machines. And I was just sharing with the team that, you know, we created the first unmanned cafe in Singapore. So we use a lot of technology and also digital data mining into our running of day-to-day businesses, because we are SME, and it is always very difficult to put in so many resources if we don't have all this information.
Fantastic. Maybe I'll pass it over to Andreas to ask the questions, because otherwise I'll get too excited and I'll ask all the questions he wanted to ask. Thank you, Justin.
Okay.
Well, I mean, let's maybe break it down a bit. You know, the advanced manufacturing topic is obviously dear to my heart. I've been exposed to the topic for a number of years, and I'm very excited to have you all on the panel. So I think my first question will go into, we hear a lot about advanced manufacturing. We listen to China, what China wants to do until 2025. We are talking about supply chains now, resilience of supply chain, disintegration, we have the trade war. And then this is all kind of added with buzzwords around, 3D printing, digital twins, mass customization, edge computing. So it's a big, broad set of different definitions. So, and then finally, we come to our Industry 4.0, our good old Industry 4.0 concept, so which has been around for a long time. So what I want to do is break this down into the company context. So my first question will go into what does it mean? What does advanced manufacturing mean for your specific company context? And why is it urgent and relevant, and especially in the context of ASEAN, since we are here in ASEAN? So maybe I would start with Johan. What is your take on advanced manufacturing in your specific company context in ASEAN?
Well, thanks, Andreas. And for ABB, I mean, this is a very large part of what we do. We bring advanced manufacturing solutions to customers, and Southeast Asia is a very important market for us. This leads to employing tens of thousands of people around the world and creating value for our shareholders, and of course, creating value for our customers. And for us, it comes in two areas. The one is very important and very urgent also in this part, and that is sustainability. So all of these aspects of having lower environmental impact as we produce things and as we manufacture things, to increase resilience, to increase flexibility, to positive impact on society. This is one whole bucket of advantages that digitalization, Industry 4.0 bring to this whole manufacturing space. And then on the other side, we desperately need economic growth. And a key ingredient for economic growth is productivity growth. And advanced manufacturing provides us with an opportunity to unlock some productivity growth, which has been stagnant for much too long, and specifically in Asia Pacific. So those are, I would say, two things that I think are clear advantages to customers adopting this technology.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for that. So maybe Andreas, in your context, coming from TÜV Süd, I mean, you have started a lot of initiative in the digital space, so you know what is needed in order to make it successful here in the ASEAN context. So what is your take with advanced manufacturing here in ASEAN?
Let me give you two perspectives, actually. One is the internal perspective. I mean, we are a technical service provider doing, let's say, inspection, safety inspections, and all types of technical services. And we have to also transform basically our way of delivering services from a more manual, analog-based service delivery to a technology-based service. So an example, it's the time is over where you hammer against exhaust pipes of cars, right? Now you have to have a handle on the software system and how the connectivity is designed. So it's a completely new way of approaching safety. And as things are connected, security plays a key role. And the time is also over where we look only into products because they're getting all connected. So we have to shift completely on a system level. So that's just a general comment. And that was actually one of the main reasons why we say, okay, either we are digital or dead in the next years to come. And we have to set up a few units who can move fast. And you can imagine, I mean, TÜV Süd, 150 years old, very Germany-centric, maybe not the most nimble and fastest corporate on this globe. So what to do? Well, we have explored areas to set up such a unit, and we found actually Singapore as a good place to start such an initiative. And in the last 5 years, we have developed several strategic areas, one of which is Industry 4.0. And I mean, why specifically Singapore and ASEAN? I think we combine here this very detailed German engineering approach with the dynamics of Asian markets. Things are simply moving much faster. Also internally, maybe not everybody should listen to that from my colleagues, but if you want to move fast, we try to do things here and not to involve, for instance, the Munich headquarters too much, right? At some stage we do this. So, and simply the environment here, and I mean, Pin Fen has pointed basically all aspects nicely out. It's an ecosystem, it's inclusive. You're part of this ecosystem, and then things are happening. And it's not just that you get some funding for R&D, it's also then the next step, translating this into applications and really ultimately into business. And maybe the last comment is the SIRI Smart Industry Readiness Index has been already mentioned. So that's also one reason why we have been so successful in the last 3 to 4 years, because we worked very successfully together with not only EDB, but also with industry partners. And I think this is the strength of this place here, that really there's so strong partnerships with the same, let's say, goal, and and then we make it happen. In Germany, you have to plan everything in advance for the next 5 years, but in these times, it's very hard to do so. So I think this approach is really quite successful.
Okay, very good. So maybe over to you, Jocelyn. You don't have a headquarters in Munich, but maybe you have other shareholders that have some interest or that have a say in what you're doing. So what does advanced manufacturing mean for you specifically? You know, is everybody embracing that concept internally, or do you see hurdles and kind of resistance in your organization?
I think just for a start, I think especially as a food manufacturer, like the other panelists has mentioned, food security is important, sustainability. For us, why is it so important? Because we have to stay very competitive. And therefore, we need to understand, you know, what the customers are looking for, what is their preference, what is the uptake based on the demand, what kind of food selection, and where is all the customer base. And all this will only come to us if we have an advanced manufacturing where we can have put in some sensors and also put in all the, you know, the CCTV or you know, some kind of tracking to understand them a bit more, so that we can have also a preemptive and also predictive measure in terms of the equipment that we are running. Just to give you an example, because of pandemic, you know, the local supply became very important to us, because we have to really source from locally, because a lot of places are locked down. At the same time, we have a lot of demand during this period of time, because, you know, with the pandemic, there is supply to the dormitories, to people who are staying at home and all that. The reason why we can scale up very fast is also because we are able to be ready, you know, when we need that kind of volume. And so during that period, we actually were running 24 hours and 24/7 for the past few months. But imagine if we don't have the advanced manufacturing, if we do not know what to produce, or, you know, to take care of the equipment and the machineries, then we will be in trouble. So that's why we feel that whatever that we have been preparing, whatever that we have been learning over the past years, it is so useful, especially during the crunch time. And during this period, we also learn about the customers' behavior and their habits and all that. And this is to keep us very efficient and also competitive, at the same time very productive, so that we can also bring the cost down and we can pass all these savings to our customers. So it is a very, very urgent matter for us, especially to all the stakeholders, not just our team, but also to our customers, because for them to understand, where we source our supply from and how we put them into the finished product and the safety of it and the security is very key.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that this crisis actually made you even more aware of the importance of advanced manufacturing, that you really need to work on that ahead of a crisis, actually, right? To bring in transparency into your production in order to make sure that your productivity is accordingly. So yes. I think that's a great learning.
I like the readiness of it. Is to be ready.
Yeah. I think this is already a great learning for our audience out there, because obviously a lot of this is relevant for SMEs also. So maybe over to you, Kokyung, is you have a different view. You have a bird's view maybe on a lot of different companies and how they're coping with advanced manufacturing. So what is your take on advanced manufacturing, and why is it so important now?
Thank you, Andres, and really thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I would just say, what advanced manufacturing is to me, and maybe even to economists, is really, two phrases I would say: doing more with less and doing differently with less. Sometimes it's a combination of both, sometimes it's one or the other. And basically, it allows for that. Maybe taking a step back, I just wanted to kind of like build a little bit on what Pingpen has mentioned just now. And many people may be wondering, why is manufacturing so important for Singapore, such a small economy? And I'll just come back to quickly covering 3 points as to why manufacturing is important. One is really, economic diversity. You saw from the slides just now. Actually, 20% manufacturing means to Singapore 80% services, because we don't have a primary industry. So economic diversity to Singapore is important. But even more important than that is the second reason, which is really the fact that it creates a good job opportunities for the people in Singapore. I think the median wages of manufacturing in Singapore is above the national average. And also the other aspect of it, which I think Lars covered at the beginning, which is the spin-off effects of manufacturing to the rest of the economy, is actually quite huge as well. For Singapore, the same as the data, well, roughly similar to the data that Lars was sharing for the United States as well. So that's second. And the third point that is a little bit lesser known is really the whole notion that actually manufacturing allows the economy to keep in touch with technology.
Yeah.
And because of that, the technology accumulation could then be subsequently deployed to solve other equations, other problems, or to seize other opportunities in Singapore. So just to give a data point, if you look at the business expenditure for R&D in Singapore, more than 60% of the business expenditure in R&D in Singapore is due to manufacturing sectors. That's just to give you a sense that, how ingrained in technology manufacturing is, and therefore why it is important to us. And again, back to then why advanced manufacturing is of urgency to Singapore. Some of the reasons I mentioned above just now already, but add one more, which is really, I talked about doing more with less, doing differently with less. It just allows Singapore to be able to, punch beyond the envelope of our resource constraint. Because Singapore, as you all know, is land constrained, but also labor constrained to a certain extent. Embracing technologies as such to improve productivity, improve competitiveness of the sector, which is already 21% of our GDP, then allows us to really punch above our resource envelope and to do more for the economy. So that's why it is actually very important and very exciting for us. But more importantly, one final point is that our success is dependent on the success of companies here. So they need to be successful in order for Singapore to be successful. I thought that's the most important point I wanted to leave behind as well. Thanks.
That's a very good point, and thank you very much for these insights. Kokyan, and you were already mentioning, I mean, a lot of the success of Singapore has to do with SMEs, right? So, and if you look at the SME landscape also beyond Singapore into ASEAN, they are at different stages of their development, right? So they are going through a learning curve, as we always say, you know, and there is a tipping point where you cannot, you know, look away. You need to do an investment either into a machine, into your production line, because you're not gaining that productivity that Andreas was mentioning. So, I mean, what are tips, you know, because we have a lot of SMEs on the call. What are tips that you would give to SMEs how to drive advanced manufacturing? And maybe I can play to you back, Kokyan, if you have some ideas.
No, I think I wouldn't profess to be an expert, but we've dealt with many companies, maybe to share some insights we heard from people as well. I think first things first, I think it's for the audience to understand that when we talk about an SME in this part of the world, it's quite different from when we talk about an SME in Germany. Yes. Or in Japan, because the size and scope is actually very, very different. I think Jocelyn would agree with me on that one. You know, sometimes for some of our colleagues in Europe or in US, when we think about SME, you know, it comes to mind maybe 100 million revenue and above euros, sometimes even 5. Whereas in this part of the world, and you rightfully pointed out, Andreas, as well, particularly in Southeast Asia, they're really looking at, you know, companies with revenue 10 million, 5 million Singapore dollars, employing 30, 50 people. So I just wanted to make sure I paint the landscape, which is important in understanding that. And I think based on that, I think what's important and what we often hear is that, you know, sometimes companies do mistaken the fact that, you know, it's not about a quantum leap. It is about having to address what is your problem statement. What is that problem statement that you need to address? Then don't worry about where is it industry 4.0, 3.0, 2.5. That's not the point. The point is what problem statement you address and whether the application of technology and sometimes process improvement allows you to achieve that. And it is going to be a journey. So I think once you have that, you make your first move. You don't try to boil the ocean. You try and come up with incremental problem statements that needs addressing. And once you're able to build that muscle to be able to do that on a continuous basis, then I think one can say that you are more prepared for that journey. So it's going to be a journey. I think it's about getting started, but it's also about starting small and starting with the relevant problem statement.
Okay, that's already some very good hints. So thank you very much for that. So over to Johan, as we were talking about, you know, starting small and the price point. Obviously, I mean, by my own experience, I know how price sensitive, you know, companies are in ASEAN. So as ABB, you know, you come into that space that must be very challenging. So what hints do you give to these smaller companies, these SMEs? How can they start with advanced manufacturing?
Yeah, it's absolutely essential and absolutely key. I mean, for us as a company, we work across the whole spectrum. So from the largest process industries right through to solutions for really small manufacturers. Someone with a single CNC machine, you know, can buy some of our solutions. And I think that's one of the fantastic opportunities of advanced manufacturing, and especially the digitalization aspect, is the hurdle or the starting point doesn't have to be very high. So there are very nice modular solutions available. Simply analyzing data that you already have, you know, it's very easy to provide some connectivity to 1 or 2 machines, even very old machines. So these opportunities are absolutely available and you know, possible. And my advice to small and medium-sized companies in this part of the world is you've got a choice. You either lead and take these steps proactively, or you're going to get forced to change at some point. I mean, it's adopt or die. Because if your competitors do this, the advantage that is gained by making data-driven decisions and continuing this improvement path it's enormous. You know, so and especially as value chains integrate a little bit more, you know, as we get this drive to make the supply chains more resilient, I think every single manufacturer is going to find that they're going to have to respond faster and more regularly to changes in the market, be that a pandemic or whatever political or other influence they might be.
Yeah. Okay. Some very good points. So start small. Don't spend a lot of money on to expensive equipment, you know, start with what you have, right? Analyzing data and so on.
Yeah.
Over to Andreas, maybe, you know, what are the challenges that you have encountered with SMEs here in the region? Also considering, you know, or asking, is the pain strong enough, you know, in this crisis? Or are we going to see really a changing mindset? How would you answer that question?
Yeah, also if you have asked me 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I would have said, Naya, many people out there who think, Naya, digitalization, it comes and goes, right? Maybe I jump on that bandwagon, maybe not. I think the pill has been swallowed now on a broader level that there is no way around this digitalization or transformation. I think this is slowly in all of our heads, right? I mean, imagine 3 years ago, what is Industry 4.0 was still a big discussion. I think now it's really about how can I improve on certain KPIs. And that's what we see before we think even about technology. And it is a strongly technology-driven discussion, fair enough, because technology is now ready for industrial deployment. So naturally, it is a very technical and technology-driven discussion, but that makes it very complicated because from that angle, it's very difficult. We heard it, yeah. What is your challenge? What is your pain, basically, you want to address? Before you start putting this all together, you need to be aware what's out there. What are the concepts? What are the solutions? What are approaches, basically? And I think this collecting information, having the awareness, the understanding is the first step. And but what it takes, and this we see very often to add on the comments which have been made already, the mindset, I mean, not only that, of course, change for everyone is difficult, but what we see right now, particularly the SMEs, they've been doing their business for decades, right? I mean, look at Bifsud, 150 years we have done the similar business model. And basically, you have to not just change generally in adapting new technologies, it's about taking a different level of risk. Also this entrepreneurial spirit we have seen of the SMEs when they started 30 years ago with the new business model, that's the new way of addressing this. Also managing business as usual, that's not going to work. Also incremental improvement of the KPIs of a factory with classical approaches, that's not going to make it anymore. But this requires simply a much bigger risk and many unknowns, and investments into I4.0 solutions are at the beginning very unclear, right? And how often are we asked actually what's exactly the ROI of this? So I think this mindset of an entrepreneur has to come much more into the picture.
Yes. Okay. Very, very good point. You're very interesting. So I think Lars has some rapid fire questions.
Just one rapid fire because the questions from the audience are piling up. So a quick reminder to every participant: if you haven't posted your question or upvoted, do it soon. The first ones are coming in. So just one round of one simple question. A little bit of a stretch, but interested to see your opinion on that. 3D printed houses. Let's go with houses today. 3D printed houses, here to stay or to go? Johan, you're smiling, so I'm just throwing the question first at you.
That's
3D
really
printed houses. To stay or to go?
that's not really my business, but if you push me on an answer, I would say to stay.
Okay, cool. And maybe we're all staying in some soon. Stretch question. So, Kok Yang, what's your take? 3D printed houses, is that the way to the future? Yes or no?
I think it's here to stay. The applications may evolve over time, the markets may evolve over time, but it's here to stay because it helps accelerate adoption.
Okay, Jocelyn, your take. Are all moving into 3D printed houses soon?
Yeah, I think it's here to stay. In fact, we are talking about 3D printing for food as well. You know, how to go into the elderly food and things like that. And we are looking at 3D printing as well.
Fantastic. So, Andreas Hauser, I have to ask you to just do the
finish,
round.
yes. To be honest, 3D printing soon, I don't see this. We have bet on this horse already 5 years ago, and we're still waiting for the market to pick up, right? But what I definitely believe it will happen, and we see already in the construction space, there are 3D printing technologies already applied, but it takes a while, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you. So now to the questions from the audience, and that one, I think Kok Yang has to answer that. Just by popularity of the audience, what's your take on the employment opportunities for Industry 4.0 next year in manufacturing sectors? And do we need talent migration for that, especially due to the transformation we are forced to go through this year? What's your employment opportunities in advanced manufacturing in 2021, and what do we need to do to maybe fuel those opportunities in the job market?
I think a couple of things. When we think about digital transformation, when we think about Industry 4.0, we have to think about it from the perspective of 3 aspects: people, processes, and technology. And it's only when the 3 actually coexist that allows us to really reap the benefit. I think you hear some of the panelists already talked about the fact that sometimes it's not just about technology. Technology being right is one thing, but the process has to be right as well in order for you to leverage technology. And the people need to be able to work in tandem with technology. So I've always thought of the fact that it's not about people versus machines, but it's people with technology, with processes. And therefore, what that means then, and I also mentioned earlier about the fact that it's a journey. So in conclusion, I think there's huge opportunities for talent to be able to work in tandem with processes and technology to reap the benefits. It does call for a regular upscaling of skills and so on, leveraging on what is already being built, because it's not going to be a quantum, it's going to be a constant innovative process improvements and so on. So I think it's about people working in tandem with technology and processes. There will be some mindset change. There will be some upskilling that's required. But in general, I'm still optimistic that at the end of the day, the people would have a big role to play if we want Industry 4.0 to take off and succeed.
Fantastic. Thank you. I know that was a tough one, but I'm sure you asked that all the time. Next question. Enver asked a question. In the 1980s, the buzzword was flexible manufacturing, but unfortunately, FMS did not really deliver on the promise. So what's different with digitalization of manufacturing today? Will we have another round of disappointments? Wow. I'll throw that at Johan, maybe. That's more your space, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, happy to answer that. So this whole technology space is fraught with buzzwords and hype, and which is unfortunately, push some customers away from adopting technology. So for us as a company, we spend a lot of time making sure that we solve real problems with a real business case behind it, and that's very clear, because that establishes credibility for the technology and for us as a brand and as a company, as a supplier. So I think that's critical. And if you look at the constraints that those solutions faced in the 80s, it's incomparable with what we have today with, the price of industrial robot arms, the ability to use sensing and video analytics integrated into manufacturing processes, the cost of sensors that have plummeted, really come down, the cost of communications and the bandwidth has exploded, cost of computing has come down tremendously. So all the ingredients are there. And I would say nothing to prove, because the use cases are so clear, the kind of paybacks that companies see that have invested in anything from, smart maintenance systems through to, flexible automation with robotics. So I think the case is made that this time it is absolutely real.
Okay, thank you. Next question I'll throw into Andreas Hauser's direction. Because you somehow indirectly approach the topic, how do you see people and leadership skills as barriers and enablers for advanced manufacturing? You had that little anecdote, like, sometimes we rather don't ask headquarters. So I'll have to call you out on that.
I thought you want to ask me about the standards. Yeah, always they put us in the corner of standards, but I'm happy to answer that one. Yeah, I mentioned this basically already. I mean, you can have a great, and then Kok Yang said it basically. Yeah, you can have a great technology, you can improve your or try to improve your process, but if the mindset is not there, it's not going to happen. And we talk about this for so many years, and actually even people who are decision makers talk about it, but they don't do it. They don't have the mindset. Also, how often do we hear basically, naja, we already do some industry 4.0, you know, like don't bother me anymore with really details or with let's say very impactful, let's say, projects. That's why we see a lot of these pilots everywhere. They don't have this transformative character. That's not Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 has a certain impact on the company with some transformation character. And very often we hear, naja, we are already open, right? We all discuss openly in the company, but that's not the point. The point is to have, of course, an open mindset, but a leadership competency in this space. And then also don't give this responsibility always to the digital champion. Give it to those guys who have P&L responsibility. Otherwise, this is always in a nice department. Nothing's going to happen. And the reality is out there still far behind what we could have reached, actually, right? We still see there's a lot of great examples and so on, but the large majority is still on a very, let's say, not to discriminate this, but on a very, let's say, a basic level. Also, and it's ultimately, I mean, it's nothing new. It's a top topic. I mean, if you want to change your manufacturing facility completely, if that doesn't go into the brain of every decision maker in the leadership team of a whole factory, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Okay, then because you also asked for it, and maybe with a short answer on the question about international standardization, you know. So we have the question regarding the international relationship. How does Singapore be involved in that standardization activity like ISO, IEC in advanced manufacturing area? If you can give us a short take on that.
Yeah, I just had a call this morning with ESG because we are part of the manufacturing committee. And Singapore sits in basically all relevant technical committees in ISO, that's the non-electrical part, and the IEC. So I think quite well represented somehow as an observer or even sometimes as a participating country. I mean, it's obvious Singapore cannot develop a new standard classically through an ISO process and pushes then this through this international organization. It's really the adoption of these standards in an early stage. So I think this strategy makes a lot of sense. However, there are also exceptions, but that is not really now in the ISO IEC domain, but take the SIRI as a, let's say, local de facto standard. This can become a global de facto standard. And Singapore, I think, makes the right thing. It's very practical. If I want to adopt autonomous cars in 2 years, I need standards. I collect them. If something is missing, I develop it myself and then take it from there. I think it's a very practical approach that helps, but I think Singapore is quite well represented in those committees.
Thank you. And you know, it's funny, I think now for the third time, my iWatch popped up with a blinking kind of surface because one of your projects is called SIRI. So always like wants an input. Andreas, Enderlin, maybe in the interest of time, and we have fantastic questions, but I think we can only have 1 or 2 quick ones before we have to wrap up.
Well, I was just looking at the list of questions. I mean, there are some very interesting ones. So I think some of them are harder to answer because it's very technical. But maybe I could just throw in one question to the panelists, because I mean, we know all what happened with the VinFast group. I mean, they have been building a automotive factory out of a greenfield approach within 21 months, I believe. So that's an unprecedented achievement in Vietnam. So my question would go to the panelists and say, well, you know, is this going to work out, or is it is it something that might blow up at some stage? Just your personal opinion. Maybe Johan, without being, with being politically correct, obviously.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. I think Vietnam has been able to attract incredible FDI in the manufacturing space. And it's shown and demonstrated that it can really manage this, that it's won the trust of some of the greatest investors globally to build really large scale factories there. So I think it's great to see local money also being invested in the manufacturing space. I don't know and understand the business proposition and exactly the details of VinFast to provide a comment about the viability of that specific opportunity. Yeah. But they are adopting technology. I think the speed is typical, this acceleration that we see in building factories and manufacturing plants. Yeah. So that's exactly what we see with other customers as well.
Okay. And maybe to you, Kok Yang, would this be possible in Singapore or?
Oh, I think anything is possible. Back to the point, I think it's possible if the few ingredients are in place, and I think Johan mentioned about it, and we think that hopefully Singapore can continue to do that as well, which is basically, to have skilled workforce with that engineering and technology content that's been built over time, right? That's one. And two, for Singapore's perspective, then is to continue to be, to be open, be connected, because you do need to import components and export final products wherever you're producing it from. So I think to be open, connected, trusted, and then subsequently continuously investing in people training and retraining, which I think is going to increasingly important. The government has to play a role there. You can't really just depend on companies alone, particularly with the pace of change that is coming up. I think investment in infrastructure, investment in training and reskilling of people, along with all these other facets of technology and so on. I think anything is possible, and I think it is the dream. I think it is about the fact that given time and given the right appropriate opportunity, that the combination of process, technology, and people can allow things that were not able to be done in the past be able to be done now. And I think that's the belief we need to have in order to push ahead and really reach a stage whereby it actually will continuously transform the way goods are produced and supply chains are managed.
Fantastic. And I think in the interest of time, unfortunately, we can't have more questions, but I think what Kok Yang just said goes hand in hand what Johan mentioned earlier. The key to economic growth is productivity growth, right? What Andreas Hauser said is, either we are digital or death in the years to come. Andreas said that, Singapore is a great place to start initiatives of Industry 4.0, especially for TÜV. One is the great collaboration with strong partners like EDB, because it's about having the same goal. We asked about the objectives earlier, right? Jocelyn shared with us about food security and sustainability are absolutely needed to stay competitive. Because you need to stay on top what customers are looking for, and that is update on demand. So it's not just that you want to be there, you have to be there to stay top of your game. And you said soon we'll see you're experimenting with it, 3D printed food. So I'm looking forward to that. We had also from Kok Yang the sentence, we have to do more with less or doing differently with less. It's again going to the productivity kind of part. Right? We have to look into process, people, and technology come together to make things happen. And last but not least, what Johan shared was you lead. Some advice was you have to lead and take steps proactively, or you're forced to follow, adopt or die. So with those kind of marking words, I want to say. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you, everybody from the audience who tuned in and shared their questions. Thanks to my co-host, Andreas Enderlin, for guiding with deep and challenging questions. And see you all hopefully next time. Big shout out, of course, for our supporters today. This episode number 6 was presented by EDB, JR Group, ABB, and TÜV Süd, and as always hosted by Swiss Jam and Deloitte. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thank
hopefully see
you.
you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.